Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing critiques of your foot assignments, last critique of the course. So I gave you guys these 3 photographs and I told you to start with a simple form analysis of these poses. So drawing only the primary, the blocky forms, and that helps you to figure out the perspective and helps you analyze the large masses that you're looking at here, removing the detailed anatomy, the wrinkles, all that stuff. Just what are the big blocky forms? And then you start a new drawing, get into the gesture, the simple structures, the anatomical details, and then finally shade it to a complete finish. So this was a much longer assignment than all the other ones, but we're ending this with a bang. Ending this with a very serious assignment. So I did some assignment demonstrations and these were my drawings. So the first assignment comes from Jason Sutton. Jason, I think you are doing generally a good job as far as your mentality for an anatomical study. I think it looks like you're trying to find those anatomical forms and you're trying to understand what they are. You know, you're finding those bony landmarks, you're looking for the tendons, and you're trying to, it looks like you're trying to find those forms underneath and putting the anatomical details on top. It looks like you're considering the anatomy as you're doing this. You're not just copying photographs, you're actually trying to dissect it into forms and anatomical parts. So that's good, that's a huge step forward. Now, as far as the bads, I think there's large fundamental errors in all these drawings, primarily with your proportions. And I'm gonna give you 3 things to watch out for. Anytime you do a drawing from reference, where you're pretty much just taking a photograph and you're gonna be drawing a photograph, you want to make sure that your proportions are correct before you move on. And to do that, there's 3 things. The first one, which is huge for me, it's a really quick way to see if you're generally in the right spot, is to check your plumb lines. And let's just check this first one. See how quickly you could have caught some of your mistakes. Some major plumb lines that I would check if I was just drawing this is like, okay, well, you got the heel. Let's draw a plumb line down from the heel and see where do I have to put my toes in relationship to the heel. So by doing that, I could see, okay, it's about, you know, right by that the nail of the big toe. Now, if I do that same thing on yours, you obviously are kind of like a whole foot width off on that. That's a really major error there. You really don't even have to choose the heel. It could be any part of your drawing. You draw a vertical plumb line and see if things are aligning, and you would be able to catch that mistake. You know, you could do the same thing from the pinky up. So if I do it from the pinky up, I can see it's kind of like right there along that, where kind of the Achilles tendon attaches to the heel. If I do that on yours is all the way up here in the front of the ankle, pretty far off of this point where it should be. So one plumb line anywhere would have given you that answer that, you know, you have to shift your toes over. The second thing is angles, checking major angles. And that's not something I check like once or twice. That's something I'm constantly checking as I'm drawing lines. You know, major lines, like if I'm drawing this line right here, I'm gonna check the angle of that line. So if I was looking at it on the photograph, I'd see, well, the angle on the photo is that. It's kind of the opposite of what you put down. Same thing in here. If I'm drawing the heel, you drew it like this and it's kind of going down. On here, it's either slightly up or pretty much just straight horizontal. I think it's just a tiny bit up, but a horizontal would have been just fine. You know, then here's an angle, here's an angle. Every angle I put down, I'm analyzing that angle. And you can see most of the angles in here, which are determining the pose, determining the angle of the foot, this way are off on yours. And because of that, your foot is going this way. So those are two things so far, plumb lines and angles. The other thing I would watch out for are size relationships of your shapes between any 2 points in your drawing. So for example, one really important thing in this pose is making sure that you're showing that we're looking almost straight on to the front plane of the foot. I mean, we are seeing a little bit of the side, but we're seeing a lot more of the front. You know, if you think of a simple box, if you show more of the front, you're gonna see like this. Let's say this is the side plane, this is the front plane. If you show more of the front plane, shows that we're looking at the front. If we start rotating the box, we're gonna show much more of the side plane, and now we're a very skinny front plane. So the relationship between those sizes determines the angle of the object. So back to your drawing, if we had measured that, let's say from the heel to like this corner, let's say that's our box. We're just ignoring the toes for now. We're just looking at like the box of the body of the foot. So there's the width of the box. And then the corner from front plane to side plane, it's like, I don't know, somewhere right there, like that. Let's kind of draw that same box on yours. So here, here, and then the corner on yours, you're actually kind of showing over here, looks like, based on your angles. Really, it should be more over here where the joint of the pinky is, but yeah, so let's just kind of put it right there where it should have been, because putting it here makes that error even more wrong. But so right there is where it should have been. Now compare the size of your front and side plane in relationship to the photo. So if I'm just gonna use the marquee tool here, grab that and say, okay, 1, 2, 3, a little over 3 on this one. And on yours, 1 less than 2. So pretty big difference there, right? You're showing much more of the side plane, so you've rotated the foot. Now, if you did that intentionally, it would be okay, but I don't think you did. I think you just made a proportional error. That's something that you actually would check as you're drawing this stuff, because anytime you're doing foreshortening, you have to check those foreshortened planes and make sure that you're not bringing them out of foreshortening, because that's a tendency that we make. I do it still. You know, it doesn't matter how much you train. I mean, I guess it does matter how much you train it, but no matter how much you train your eye, you're still gonna have a tendency to bring it back towards that. And so we have to check ourselves. When I was doing my drawing, this one, I made that check. I took my pencil, I measured it on the photograph, and then I made sure that I got it as close as I could in the photograph. Now, where you put that corner, where you measure from, is gonna be different. I think I measured it in a slightly different spot. So it's not like there's a specific answer here. It's wherever you measure from. It's really just measuring relationships between shapes. I measured more than just the side plane versus the front plane. I think I took like the height, some heights in here from the heel to the ankle, and see what's the relationship between that and the width of the entire foot. Just trying to, you know, spend a few minutes setting myself up for success here, so that I don't make any huge mistakes that then, you know, once I start shading, it's too late. Just spend a few minutes getting those measurements in the right spot, and then it becomes so much easier from there. Okay, so fundamental errors, but let's go back to anatomy. So this right here is a bone, but you're drawing it very round, very soft. This bone, it's the bottom part of the fibula, it's got planes. You know, if you look at reference of it, it's got a front plane, it's got some side planes. Also, this is a bone that you're indicating here. And also, this is a bone. A lot of these indications feel kind of soft. This one's the closest because you're showing some plane changes here, right there. And that hard edge in the plane change, it does indicate a more hard surface. And so that's good. But kind of just overall, I feel like your bony landmarks feel too soft. They feel like if I poke them, they'd be squishy. So I guess let's go back to my drawing and I'll show you what I did to kind of make sure that it doesn't feel that way. This bony landmark, you see how I'm showing a plane right there, very obvious plane, and then plane right there. And then it goes in, and then all of this it just kind of goes in there and gets covered up by this muscle. Now look at how I treated that muscle. Much softer, much softer in the shading. The plane changes in there are not nearly as sudden. I'm just kind of treating it more as a ovoid kind of sausagey shape, flat sausage. Same thing in here, right? There's a bone in there, and it's got a much sharper turn right in here. And not just even in the contours. I mean, contours are a great place to show corners, yes, but it's not just that. That's not the only way to show a bony surface. You have that corner there, yes, but then in the shading, I'm showing, in a very subtle way, a plane change right there, because I got halftone all through here, and then the light through here shows a plane change like that. And then it gets dark again, indicating that there's a plane change this way. And that kind of more sudden dark or plane change right there does kind of indicate a bony part. And also the fact that it's kind of a straight line across indicates that that's the front plane of the tibia pushing through. Whereas in here, if you kind of ignore the veins and tendons going through, you kind of feel that overall softness of the muscle there, right? Like this whole area here feels soft and round, whereas this area feels much harder because that's much more bony. And then of course the knuckles of the top planes of the toes feel harder than the bottoms, which are more rounded, right? Like even in areas where I'm showing kind of like little plane changes, like a corner here, I'm rounding out those corners quite a bit. And it feels softer compared to the planes of the joints. So there are relationships there. And then again, subtle halftone changes, like right there, shows that this is bone. There's a bony surface in there. And then over here, it kind of widens a little bit, but it widens with hard corners. And the core shadow is very thin, indicating a joint in that area. Okay, so that's kind of hard versus soft surfaces, showing planes versus more rounded cylindrical forms. The last kind of critique I have for you is some of this like hairy outlines. You're kind of putting noise in there, and I feel like you're trying to make it kind of artsy, or it's like a stylistic decision there. Try to not do that with anatomical studies. I think it actually just gets in the way when you have such distracting stylistic choices in there. Focus on more academic approach to these, where you're just trying to be accurate, you're trying to reveal form rather than be artistic and expressive. There's definitely value to that when you do your own art. But with anatomical studies, it's not about that. It's about learning. It's about studying the body and practicing to represent it correctly through a drawing. So thank you, Jason. Okay guys, thank you so much for doing these, and thank you for being part of this course. We're done with the body. So next steps, go through it again. You don't have to watch every lesson again, but just maybe take a break, focus on something else for a while. But then once you start missing anatomy, once you start feeling like I need to improve my anatomy again, go back and do it again. It's okay. I've gone through it like a dozen times in detail. I don't do assignment drawings for every part of the body as I'm going through it, but I definitely go through and I study it, and I do little sketches of things that I learned, and then I apply it to actual drawings that I'm working on. I'm not saying you need to go through the entire course and do every assignment again. You could if you want, but I wouldn't. Honestly, I would go through that body again, maybe watch some of the lessons, go through some of the ebooks, kind of flip through the pages, get some information that you forgot about, and then apply it to real stuff. Create your own assignments going forward. Don't just do the things I'm telling you to do. You gotta now start to really have fun with the stuff. Put it in your own art. If you guys want to see the rest of the critiques, I got a whole bunch more in the premium section at proko.com/anatomy. And of course, you get a lot more than just more critiques. You get full lessons, you get premium only lessons, much more detail in just all the anatomical information. You get more assignment demonstrations, ebooks. We create PDFs reviewing all the lessons, and so you can print them out. They're really good ways to review all the information from each lesson. 3D models of all the muscles and bones that we learn. You can rotate them all in the browser. You don't have to download any software. So it's a good course. It's over at proko.com/anatomy. But anyway, thank you guys for doing these. Really appreciate the participation, and I'll see you in a few months. We got a few more videos on the anatomy course, and then on to new projects.